What if I told you that a single hit of cocaine can rewire your brain in ways that last for months? That every time you take a drug, you're literally reshaping the physical structure of the most complex organ in your body? Welcome to the fascinating and sometimes terrifying world where chemistry meets consciousness. Your brain contains about 86 billion neurons, each one a living powerhouse capable of forming thousands of connections. These aren't rigid circuits like the wires in your laptop. They're dynamic, flexible cells, constantly changing in response to experience. They talk to each other through a symphony of electrical signals and chemical messengers known as neurotransmitters. Think of your brain as the world's most advanced postal service. Neurons send letters by releasing neurotransmitters into microscopic gaps, called synapses. Those neurotransmitters drift across and lock into receptors on the next neuron, like keys fitting into locks. When the right key finds the right lock, the message is delivered. Whether that message is the taste of chocolate, the pain of a paper cut, or the thrill of falling in love. One chemical in particular plays a starring role in this story: dopamine. It's often called the pleasure chemical, but that's oversimplified. Dopamine is less about pleasure itself and more about prediction and motivation. It fires when you experience something rewarding, yes, but even more powerfully when you anticipate the reward. That's why just seeing your favorite food on the menu can make your mouth water. Drugs enter this delicate system like uninvited guests who not only crash the party, but rewrite the rules of the house. They hijack mechanisms designed by evolution to keep you alive, and they do it with ruthless efficiency. Most addictive substances, despite their different forms, share a common target: the dopamine system. Take cocaine. Under normal conditions, dopamine is released, does its job, and then gets vacuumed back up by transporters to stop the signal. Cocaine blocks those transporters, leaving dopamine stuck in the synapse. The result is an unnatural flood of pleasure signaling, a high far more intense than anything your brain was built to handle. Methamphetamine takes the chaos further. It doesn't just block reuptake, it reverses the pumps. Instead of pulling dopamine back in, the transporters start dumping it out. Imagine a recycling system suddenly working backward, spewing trash into the streets instead of cleaning them up. The dopamine flood becomes a tsunami, overwhelming every circuit it touches. Opioids like heroin and oxycodone take a different path, but end up in the same trap. They mimic natural endorphins, the brain's built-in painkillers, but they don't just whisper, they shout. They latch onto opioid receptors with overwhelming force, creating euphoria so powerful the brain begins to code it as essential to survival itself. And the brain, being a master of balance, fights back. It reduces its own neurotransmitter production. It downregulates receptors. This is tolerance, needing more and more drug to achieve the same high. But tolerance is only the start. With repetition, the architecture of the brain itself changes. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought, long-term planning, and impulse control, begins to weaken. The limbic system, the ancient emotional core that drives craving and motivation, becomes hyperactive, but only for drug-related cues. This imbalance is why someone may desperately want to quit, yet find themselves unable to resist when faced with triggers. Here's where neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, turns against you. Every time you use drugs in a particular place or mood, your brain strengthens those connections. It's Pavlov's dogs, but with far higher stakes. A recovering alcoholic might walk past the bar they once frequented and feel an almost physical pull. A psychology major might recognize this as classical conditioning at work. Cues paired with reward now trigger craving automatically. Stress pours gasoline on the fire. Chronic drug use ramps up cortisol, the stress hormone, leaving your system on edge. Anxiety feels sharper. Relief feels further away. Substances promise escape, but over time, they deepen the very stress they're supposed to numb. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable. The reward system, driven by dopamine, matures early. But the prefrontal cortex, the brain's brakes, isn't fully developed until around age 25. It's like handing the keys to a car with a turbocharged engine and weak brakes. No wonder teens and young adults are at greater risk of risky behavior and addiction. Genetics adds another layer. Biology majors might point out that gene variations affect how quickly you metabolize substances or how sensitive your dopamine system is. A person with an alcoholic parent isn't doomed, but their brain may be wired to experience stronger rewards or weaker brakes. But here's the hopeful part. The brain that gets hijacked can also heal. Recovery is possible because the same plasticity that builds addiction can build new, healthier pathways. When drug use stops, neurotransmitter production slowly resets. Receptors come back online. Circuits repair. This takes time, months, even years, which is why recovery is so challenging and relapse is common. Treatment gives the brain help while it heals. Medication-assisted therapies like methadone, buprenorphine, or naltrexone stabilize brain chemistry, buying time for new habits to form. For psychologists, this means pairing meds with therapy that retrains thought and behavior. For educators, it means teaching coping skills that build resilience. For nurses, it means guiding patients through withdrawal while protecting dignity and hope. Environment matters too. A business student might see recovery like rebranding. You can't just remove the old product. You must build a compelling new one. New relationships, hobbies, and life goals create alternative pathways that compete with cravings. Exercise deserves a special mention. Physical activity naturally boosts dopamine and endorphins. It stimulates growth of new neurons and strengthens circuits for self-control and emotional balance. A nursing or kinesiology student might describe it as medicine without a prescription, rewiring the brain in the right direction. Addiction science also teaches us empathy. Understanding addiction as a brain disease doesn't erase personal responsibility, but it explains why willpower alone often fails. The neural changes are real, measurable, and profound, but they aren't permanent. With treatment, support, and time, the brain can heal. Your brain is both fragile and resilient. Every choice about substances is a choice about how you sculpt your neural architecture. Addiction shows the dark side of plasticity. Recovery shows its light. The same pathways that once chained someone to drugs can, with care and repetition, become highways to health. Science is proving what lived experience has always hinted at. With compassion, community, and evidence-based care, even the most damaged brains can find their way back to balance.